Strap yourselves in and hold on tight. This is the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week I head down to Mount Hood and Windell's camp to talk with Tim Durtschi over a few ice-cold 10 barrels. If you haven't heard about Tim, well, he's known for being the first guy to take doubles into the backcountry, which he did almost a decade ago. This feat not only blew minds in the ski world, but it changed the course of the sport. And on the podcast, this Alaskan isn't afraid to share. We talk about his long ski career, his hacked phone, which is an insane story, the Saga, and then we close it out with arguably the best Inappropriate Questions segment that we've ever had, the one and only Andy Parry Asks Them. Before we get into the show, I want to ask you to tell someone about the podcast. I don't care if they're your friend or not, just tell them. Hopefully they will listen. I also want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement. And finally, I need to thank my amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Evo, Stanley, Spy Optic, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk to Tim Durtschi.
I was skiing up at Windell's camp. What are we on, session 3 now?
I don't know. Have you been here for a while?
I've only been here for a few days. I came up to ski with Kai Jones, a little TGR week. He comes up every year, learn some tricks. Kai's always skiing in the backcountry, but likes to get out and get in the park and learn some tricks, some stuff he can take to cliffs and whatnot.
Is he the youngest person that you hang out with? Because he's a pretty young kid. And how old are you?
I'm 33. He's 13. So what? It's like 2 decades younger than me.
But you know his parents and it's cool. They'll sign the waivers and let you do that.
Yeah, dude. Todd's the man.
He's pretty much your boss, right?
Yeah, Todd's the boss. He's what did he start TGR in 96? Way before Kai was even a thought. Now I got Kai here ripping around, learning tricks, and we ski all winter together. So kind of coaching him a bit.
So that's pretty much what you're doing in your winters now? You're skiing a lot with Kai?
Yeah, well, he's got the IFSA comps, but he's also trying to film a segment, which is really cool.
The shit that kid's doing is crazy.
Yeah, we hit the Smart Bastard cliff together in Jackson last season, and then we hit it again this year, and he went even bigger, and now he's talking about backflipping it next year. And he's just like on this progression train. It reminds me of back when I was his age. You know, you just want to learn every trick you can, and that's how he goes.
When you were growing up, learning every trick you could, people weren't taking that kind of stuff to the backcountry, especially not 13-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of people to look up to.
He was born into it. I mean, it's what he's supposed to do with life.
Exactly, dude. His uncle's Jeremy Jones.
You've been coming to Hood forever. How long have you been coming to camp?
I think my first year at camp, I was like 17, and I came out with hopes to be a coach, checked it out, and got invited to coach for the summer, which was kind of a dream back then because winter stops when you're 17 years old and like all you want to do is ski. So got a coaching job, and that was kind of the dream.
And you get paid to be a coach when you're here?
A little bit, yeah. It was enough to make it through the summer and be skiing every day for sure.
And you're an Alaskan, and Alaskans are known for having big nights. Have you had any big nights here at camp? Because I hear it used to be a little bit crazier than maybe it is now.
It used to get pretty rowdy. I remember Brandon Becker throwing a skateboard through a TV once. But that was back when we had the old Ark Motel. Had all the coaches staying there, but things have changed, but camp's awesome. It's good to come back. I feel like I haven't missed the summer since then. Always come back and hang out and ski with the kids.
Well, we were talking about growing up in Alaska and having big nights. The only reason I asked is because I heard there's a story about you being found in a ditch here. I don't know if you remember that story at all, if that's true, and if we can even talk about that.
Durtschi's ditch, yeah, that happened. That actually happened here in Windell, not in Alaska. But it might have happened in Alaska, too. I'm trying to recall here.
So, Durtschi's ditch is a story. You were found in a ditch by who?
Fire department.
Wow. And did they just take you home?
The fire department here knows Tim Windell, so when they found me, they knew that I was part of camp. They could smell it on me.
And they were cool. They just took you home?
Yeah. It all started at the Brightwood Tavern But now I'm staying up in Govey this year, so it's been a little bit more mellow.
Well, I think it gets more mellow as time goes on. You were a little bit younger back then. Were you involved with like a lawn furniture rearrangement that night? Or will that remain a mystery to this whole town?
That will remain a mystery. Tim Windell, I still argue that one to this day.
If you still argue it to this day, I believe you. You grew up in Alaska, and was there anything odd that you found when you first came to the lower 48? And it being like, whoa, that's super weird.
Yeah, well, the weirdest thing is that we call it the lower 48. Everyone gets a trip out of that. I moved when I was like 16 years old, and I was just hyped to like go to a mountain that had a park. The mountain I grew up in didn't really have a park, and that's pretty much what I had my heart in, was park skiing at the time. So I was hyped. I was like, oh, all the mountains down there have parks. It's sick. Like, they don't want to build a park up here, but kind of the mountain up there was our park for sure. I learned a lot of my tricks on wind lip features. The mountain I grew up on, Alyeska, it's pretty playful.
I think we're getting ahead of the game here talking about your skiing, because really I want to find out more about your growing up. So I've said Alaskans like to party. You definitely agree with that. There's the Durtschi ditch story, and it still continues. There's powder awards that we'll talk about later. But growing up in Alaska, like, how cold does it get there? Are there times where you can't leave your house because it's negative 40 degrees and that's just your life?
I don't think it's like cold like Minnesota, but it's definitely like a long winter. So it starts to get at you.
And what's your hometown?
Anchorage, Alaska.
The biggest part of Alaska?
Yeah, it's kind of the biggest town. I kind of grew up skiing Alyeska and then hanging out in Girdwood a lot. So Girdwood's just a really small town.
Is it all cul-de-sacs and Teslas in Girdwood?
I don't know if many people drive Teslas up there. Diesel trucks.
People work hard up there and
oh, yeah.
Mountain town.
My uncle lives up there. My cousin, Max Durtschi, he was on the world tour for a year. He's like a fisherman now. So they're hardworking, man.
And you come from ski royalty. I think you have uncles that are ski racers that I don't know if they went to the Olympics or whatever they did, but...
Yeah, my uncles skied for the U.S. ski team back in the 80s. And I was talking to my family a little bit about skiing the other day, and my uncle competed with the Mayer brothers and had a little rivalry against them.
Does Andy ever say to you that, hey, my dad and uncle are better than your dad and uncle?
No, Andy's too nice of a guy, but I know my uncles were like big ski racers, and like that was their life when they were doing it.
You get into skiing because your whole family skis. That's what the Durtschis do. You get into ski racing as well, and how is ski racing for you? Yeah,
that's definitely where I started, was ski racing. That was family tradition. My dad ski raced, everyone ski raced. But ski racing back in the 90s was different. I mean, I was hitting bamboo gates. I didn't have the rapid gates or whatever they call them, the breakaways. When I started, it was just like old school kind of. My parents would take me skiing every weekend, and I did it to go racing, but then definitely got a little distracted with the big mountain side of things. I mean, Alyeska is kind of a hard place to want to ski race at because the whole mountain is just like huge.
You guys get a lot of snow there. I mean, I would think that impacts ski racing as well.
Yeah, we had a 1,000-inch year once.
Wow.
I just grew up thinking, oh, it snows all the time, 24/7. Like, there's snowbanks in the street. So when I moved down here and like lived in a city where there was no snowbanks, I was like, this is kind of weird. It's like raining down here and snowing at the mountain. But I just like grew up in like winterland.
Could you imagine if you were a kid like Kai Jones who had fat skis when you were little, when you had a shit ton of snow where you were? How different your skiing could have been just by living in a place that got 1,000 inches of snow. Because when you were growing up, you were probably what, like 85 underfoot?
Oh yeah, dude. I remember I grinded a rail, like our mountain got a rail, and I grinded it on my GS skis, and my dad was pissed. My skis were trashed. We didn't really have POW skis when I was growing up.
You had fat skis when you're getting POW days every day when you're growing up. It would have changed your game because the amount of snow that you got when you were younger and the amount of time that you were able to ski at your home resort when you were growing up is probably more than the time that you get to ski anywhere else nowadays.
Well, that's kind of why I quit ski racing. I think I was like 14 when I quit.
Were you any good? I mean, were you moving places in ski racing where you actually thought you were going to do well?
Yeah, but it was just like so disconnected from the lower 48. There's that term again. I mean, some of the kids that did really well, they had to travel a lot, and I was just stuck up in Alaska, and I was starting to get inspired by everyone who came to Alaska to like go heli skiing. Like I would go into the ski shop World Cup. It's not around anymore, but I would go in there and there'd be like posters on the wall, like Seth Morrison and Dean Cummings. Those guys would all come up to like heli ski, and I was like, where is this stuff? I'm here riding these lifts and these guys are getting to fly around. And so that was like my inspiration when I was young, just to like not give a shit about racing.
13, 14, is that when you find the new Canadian Air Force, Freeze Magazine,
Oh, yeah.
and that kind of shit?
Yeah, absolutely. The first movie I watched was 13. We would sit and do VHS video review, and then we get bored of that, and then some kid in our race group like brought the 13 VHS and popped it into the TV, and we started watching that. We're like, why are we sitting here watching each other bash gates? These guys are throwing down. I guess I was just at the age where when I saw that movie 13, I was just like hooked.
Did you stop racing immediately and get a pair of twin tips?
Yeah, me getting twin tips was a good story because my dad was pissed about me grinding rails on my GS skis. So he's like, well, if you're going to be doing that, you need to get a pair of twin tips.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you're a 14-year-old in spandex. Is that even cool to you?
I mean, it was kind of cool because like for Alyeska, it was a small ski area. So all my friends were ski racing. And at that time, it was just, oh, well, I get to ski with my friends. We all get to ski race together. But we're always disobeying our coaches. And if it's snowing, we're going to the upper mountain and not bashing gates and Tanaka lift.
But all on your 80 millimeter underfoot skis.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think I got a pair of twin tips until I quit racing. One of the kids got a pair of twin tips and we'd all like try to borrow them. And we'd be like, can I take those for like 2 runs? Just 2 runs, man.
What was your first twin tip?
The blue 1080. Kids had the yellow ones. And as soon as like one kid at our mountain got those yellow 1080s, it was just like, whoa.
So we're talking about late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s.
How about summers? Are you able to ski around in AK? Are you going to camps and are pros coming through like they do at these camps where you're here? Or is it just through ski media?
Mostly just ski media, literally VHS tapes. And then me and my buddies would put together our own VHS tape. And like I still have my little VHS sponsor me tape. I think my first pair of skis I got sponsored free from a sponsor was a pair of Dynastars. Because just one of the Dynastar reps had those little big fat skis. And so I just was like hungry. I was like, I'll do anything to get a pair of twin tips.
You've quit racing. You're 16, 17. A big thing that happens in your life is your parents get divorced and it totally fucks you up. And that sucks for anybody. And I would think when you're 16 or 17, you might be old enough where it doesn't fuck you up. But what happens in your world?
Yeah, I mean, I went through a lot like in that period of my life where our family moved to the lower 48. Parents got divorced. I was trying to ski every day that I could.
Are you bummed moving from Alaska? Are you sad leaving all your friends and like, shit, we have to move to the lower 48?
Because of park skiing, I was like, dude, I'm going to a mountain with like a full park. It's going to be sick. We ended up moving to Bend, Oregon, and that's a Mount Bachelor. It was my new mountain that was right by my high school. And I was like, this is nice of my parents to set me up with such a sweet deal, even though shit in life is kind of crazy. But then I started doing slopestyle comps and halfpipe comps. And then they used to have X Games qualifier. And so I tried out for that and didn't really have much luck with that. But then Super Park 6 came to Bachelor and that like brought all the pros there. And I ended up winning like a spot at X Games for that. My world kind of like flipped where nothing's happening in Alaska. We're 1,000 miles away from anything. And then I moved to Bend, Oregon and was able to get this amazing opportunity. Got invited to the Super Park 6. That was the coolest event around back then. The Powder put that on.
So you moved there in 2003. You're in high school. You move as a family there, and then your dad takes off. Your world ends, and you just focus on skiing and get really good at park skiing.
So focused on skiing, and I have to do good at these events. It was fun, though. It was a little lawless back then, more than it is today.
At that point, people would party. I mean, some people wouldn't party the night before the event.
I was actually, back then, I was so focused. I like skied every day I could. I was still under 21. I didn't really get into the party thing until I went up to Whistler.
Okay. When you start filming with Rage, 2004-ish to 2007, you film with those dudes. Not the biggest exposure that you can get in skiing, but it's a player in the ski movie world. You know, like a
oh no, Rage
player.
Films was awesome back then.
Yeah.
It was like, I just kind of like walked in because they had a studio in Bend, Oregon. I drove by it every day on the way to school, and I was like, I'm just going to walk in there and go talk to those guys.
No way.
And I talked to Sky Pinnock, and he's like, yeah, I guess we could film you, man. I heard you've been doing some good stuff up at Batchy. Yeah, and then Pete Alport was a huge part of my career back then. He filmed with Rage. And
for people that don't know Pete, he is the nicest and most positive and complimenting person in the entire world.
He is now.
Is he? He's not Angry Pete anymore?
He's not Angry Pete. He's great. Yeah, it's funny to look back, really. He was an angry filmer.
Everybody had stories about Pete, but when you're filming with Rage, back then, you skied everything, and you come from Alaska and no big mountains and a race background. But you're doing a lot of urban with Rage.
Oh, yeah, I was way into urban.
When you think back to urban skiing in those days, what's the most technical and what's the most gnarly thing that you look back like, I can't believe I even fucking thought about doing that?
I'd say the gnarliest thing was I did a trip to Calgary with Poor Boys, and it was like negative 40 degrees. We like didn't even want to leave the hotel because it's so cold. And like hiking an urban rail, you're just getting sweaty. So like you're just freezing to death, sweating. Looking back on it, there's no way I would do that now. But that trip was crazy. I was with like Pete Olenek.
Back then, when you looked at the most progressive company out there, it's Poor Boys.
Yeah.
And like that's who everybody wants to film with. Johnny is the fucking wizard, and they have all the players,
Johnny is the
JP,
wizard.
Pep, everyone that makes an amazing movie. I would think while Rage is a big part of your career and it helps grow your brand and people figure out who you are a little bit more, when you get to Poor Boys, you're on the fucking map. Kids in Czechoslovakia know who you are because you're in a Poor Boys movie. How do you end up hooking up with Johnny and that whole crew?
That's all thanks to Pete. Pete was hungry. Like, he's as hungry as any skier. Like, as a filmer, he's like, I want to film with Poor Boys. And he formed a relationship with Johnny. And then he just called me up one day and was like, dude, if you want to film with Poor Boys next year, I'm going to be working with them. I'm not going to say no to that.
That's what you want to do, right?
Yeah, it was amazing.
It didn't involve sponsors or anything like that. It was Pete got you into Poor Boys. No one paid your way in.
Totally.
So you owe a lot of your career to Pete Alport.
Totally. And like, as tumultuous as our friendship was at the time, I was like, we're going to make this work. That next year filming, yeah, dude, it was awesome. Started to get into the backcountry. Pete was like, you got to buy a snowmobile. So I bought a snowmobile and started figuring out that whole scene, which I am terrible on a snowmobile. This year, I finally figured it out.
We're talking about over a decade on a snowmobile.
Oh, yeah.
But most Alaskans don't say snowmobile. They say snow machine.
Oh, yeah, they say snow machine.
You've been assimilated to America.
Oh, man. It's so tragic.
Yeah, well, you used to be Alaskan, and that's cool.
Now it is time for me to take a quick sponsor break, and my first sponsor is Evo. And Evo is a store I've been shopping at since 2001. I've always gone there because the people who work there never act too cool. They're kind of the people that are stoked and genuinely want to help. They're like that in all of their stores. Denver, Portland, Whistler, and of course my Seattle store. Their website, evo.com, offers just as much information and all the brands, product, and service for your bike, skate, surf, camp, ski, or snowboard needs. They also offer free shipping on orders over $50, a low price guarantee, and a no-hassle return policy. Evo was started by a good friend, professional skier Bryce Phillips, and they have supported me since day one. Please support them by buying everything you need for your adventures from Evo. My next sponsor is Stanley, another iconic Seattle brand that has been ahead of the curve since 1913. And while we all know Stanley for creating that green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long, they still do that and a lot more these days. When my kid thinks of a Stanley, he's going to remember the beer pint that kept his dad's beer cold for 4 hours, or the classic legendary bottle that magically keeps hot chocolate hot for over 2 full days. But we should all be thinking about Stanley when we drink water. Their water bottles are the best in class, and they are the right choice for the environment. And now you can save 30% on all products from Stanley when you head over to stanley-pmi.com, buy some stuff, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL, the number 30, and that's all one word, and you're done. Make a difference, save some money, and those are my sponsors, so now we will jump back into the podcast.
You're with Poor Boys. Have you developed sponsors yet at this point? Who's paying you to ski?
Yeah, barely. I rode for Head Skis, and they started to produce this really wide ski. They called it the muffin cake.
Good name. Really good name.
I don't think many people know about this.
That's a good thing.
If you watch that movie, you'll see I'm on some super weird pair of skis that looks like an Eric Pollard, one of his super wides. That was pretty cool because I was like, whoa, I'm on the cutting edge of this new ski with Head. And
how could they call it the muffin cake? I mean, it's muffin top.
It was one kid, his name's Tyler. It was his design, and he brought it to Head. Head didn't really know anything about POW skis back then, but this guy Tyler, he was trying to get them to mass produce the skis. So we got a few prototypes, and I was just so happy to get my hands on a pair of them. And I cut the tips all weird because I didn't like the way that he had the tips. So I was in my garage working on these things. They were 145 under waist, so they were super fat. They're too wide for 90% of the things you want to do. But then once you find a sick cliff that you want to try to land switch in, that was what I was hyped on.
Head sponsor you in the beginning. Who pays you now to ski? And how long have you been on the brands that pay you?
Well, I've been on Atomic Skis for 10 years now. I started when the Ben Chetler came out.
When they got cool, when Jordan Judd joined the program.
Jordan Judd, there's a story.
What's the story?
He's the man. He's the one who introduced me to the Jones brothers, Todd and Steve. They tell me this story all the time, as soon as I get a couple beers in them.
Okay, what's the story?
Just that Jordan Judd told them that they had this weirdo who didn't really fit in at Poor Boys, but needed a home. And that's when those guys called me up and were like, yeah, we're doing a premiere. We'd love to meet you. The premiere with TGR is big every year in Jackson Hole. They go big. Family dinner, golf tournament.
Those dudes throw down.
Oh, absolutely. And they're so stoked on the movie that they take a whole week out of their life dedicated to the premiere. And it's the best time ever. So I got this invite and I was like, I have to go. I have to meet these guys. I'm a little nervous, but I'll just get thrown in the mix and see how it goes. And so I met those guys, and then, we partied because that's what the Jones boys do. So that was kind of the beginning of the whole TGR thing. And those guys were just super stoked on me. And the thing Todd always tells me is he asked Sage Catabriga, because Sage Catabriga is their homie. And they asked him about me, and Sage was like, yeah, he's the Dark Wizard. So this is the story that Todd and Steve always talk about. But no, they were stoked. They bring new riders to the family every once in a while, And that's what I love about TGR. It's just like a family. It's so sick. Sage has been in the films for decades, and Ian Mack, Nick McNutt, Johnny Collinson. And it's just kind of cool to see over the years how they've brought in different athletes. And it's just such a fun group of people.
It's an amazing collection of like-minded people that like to have a good time, and it's pretty cool. There's a lot of unique personalities within that group.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's a family until one of the family member sponsors pulls out of the movie, and then you're like, fuck, I might not be filming with TGR, which is an unfortunate part of the industry, but it's business. So you've been with Atomic for 10 years, and you've been with Saga from the beginning?
Saga Outerwear, 2005. Really close friends that started that business.
Do you have a piece of it at all, or are you just one of the first athletes?
Yeah, me and Wyman Miller are both part owners of the company.
Austin's part of that program, too. What's the craziest thing you and Austin have ever done?
Austin Stevens?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Man, we used to hang out a lot back in the day. I haven't really seen him much lately, but they bought a bunch of guns a couple of years ago, and we were just shooting AR-15s. He's a crazy character. He's always into something crazy. But I met Austin when he moved out to Windell's, and he was like a digger. And then he went from being a digger to managing the whole ski team. He got Tom Wallish and Hornbeck and all those guys to coach here. He built up the whole ski side of thing. If there's any reason that Windell's is the ski camp, it's because of him. And then all along the way, just building the Saga brand.
Well, what were the early days like with them? Andy here is a believer that bigger is better in terms of clothing fits. Have you always been about the big fit?
That definitely was how Saga started, because the whole outerwear scene back then was pretty tight. But not even just tight, it was just dorky. I don't know how else to explain it. There was just not much going on, and then like Saga came out with these really cool clothes and promoted them on New Schoolers, and then just kind of caught on. And they've definitely changed over the years.
And I would say change over the years is what they have now. I want to say what the fuck is going on with Saga. Were they bought by the same brand that bought Dekine and Spider?
Yeah, I don't know if I can disclose that information, but there's something cooking.
And it could be a huge opportunity for the brand. And you're an owner of that brand?
Yeah.
So you're pretty excited in terms of Saga.
And it's been tough along the ways. Like, I'll be honest, there were years when I was like, should I drop this and wear some North Face and see what happens? Or getting approached by some other companies that could possibly pay me or whatnot. But I definitely just stuck with Saga because it's like my best friends who started the company, and just believe in them. And it would just feel so wrong to leave my homies just for some sponsorship contract that you'll sign and maybe it'll be good for a few years, but after that, you're not going to have the people that you love skiing with.
Yeah, you're only going to have $400,000 in your bank account, but whatever. I mean, it's a personal choice that you made there, and that's cool.
$400,000, I definitely.
Well, I'm just saying over a period of the decade and a half that you end up being on Saga.
Yeah, but now Saga's...
We don't know. We can't even talk about Saga. They're doing big things. I'm going to get a beer. Do you need a beer?
Absolutely.
So Saga's paying you, Atomic's paying you. Who else are sponsors that pay you right now?
Sierra Nevada.
Whoa,
that's
nice.
A beer sponsor.
Yeah, I have a beer sponsor too. My beer is a little bit better. 9 out of 10 people say my beer is better than Sierra Nevada.
Is it home brewed?
It's 10 Barrel.
10 Barrel. That's what we're sipping on right now.
Yeah, if you can't get a 10 Barrel, Sierra Nevada's a great second choice, in my opinion. In your opinion, you probably like Sierra Nevada better. No big deal. So you've got 3 people paying you right now, and I'm not going to ask you your number of what you make, but I do talk about money to a lot of people, almost everyone. What's the biggest contract you've ever signed? Have you ever signed a 6-figure deal?
No. That's a big no. 6 figures, wait, is that 100,000?
It's 100,000, and it would be like if you had a 3-year, $35,000 deal.
No, I mean, the biggest contract I signed was with Atomic. Atomic has been my bread and butter. And it's the sickest ski ever, the Ben Shetler. I could not be happier.
And when Chris left K2, it was the best decision of his life. Sage got on Atomic as well, but a couple months after Chris got the ski. K2 had the helmet, and Chris was number 4 in line at K2. He went to number 1 in line with Jordan, and the rest of his career, I mean, he's definitely a hard worker, makes a lot of shit happen. It's pretty amazing to see what he has done, but we're not here to talk about Chris Van Shetler. You've got those 3 sponsors, and when you're filming with Poor Boyz, you get in, and then you totally stop competing. You just pull the plug, like, I'm done. I'm filming with people, and it's happening. I'm not going to compete anymore.
Yeah, it was all about making a film seg. I did the Red Bull Line Catcher, which was a sick contest, which should come back.
Those contests are the contests that are catered to non-contest skiers. That's made for the Seths and the Peps and the people like that, and that's what Line Catcher. But you just quit competing. What was your best finish when you were a contest skier? Did you ever have any big wins?
I don't remember.
Did you ever have any wins?
No.
Not one?
No.
If you're a contest skier, you gotta be able to say, I won something.
No, I can't. I got 3rd at the Line Catcher.
It's a great contest against a stacked field.
I'm not a comp guy, dude. I get nervous.
Oh, is that what happens?
I overthink it.
That happens to some people.
I'm going to do the Corbett's comp this year.
But that's a different comp as well.
I have some experience with the Line Catcher. I'm like more excited to do this comp than any comp I've ever done in my life.
I hear you, but when I think contest, I think of dropping next, and you're going to have a judge score, and it's Tim Durtschi from Alaska. Here he goes. And you put a lot of time in, but that wasn't your thing, and it didn't even matter because of the films that you've done, and you film with everyone. But did your sponsors care at all when you decided not to compete?
No. I was sponsored by Boyz, and they dropped me when I didn't do the X Games.
Did you have an invite and not do it?
No, I just quit competing in the X Games because I didn't get invited back because I didn't win a comp.
Ever in your life?
Yeah, that's a bummer. But I'm going to win the Corbett's Comp next year.
In your career, you're the dude that starts throwing really big tricks in the backcountry. Tanner was throwing big tricks in the backcountry too. He broke his ankles. You're like the next guy to really session Chads with tricks that were game-changing 8 years later. Every day's was a Saturday or something like that?
Well, the Chad's Gap was in Reasons. But the year before that was every day's a Saturday. And after that year, I was like, okay, I need to come back and do something bigger. So I was like, I'm definitely just going to hit Chads or something. That was a pretty big session. I actually got a concussion because I kept trying that trick, even though I landed it pretty good. I don't think I stomped it very well. And that season was rough for me. I got frostbite on my toes at the line catcher. And I was just like, I have to do better than I did last year. And all that pressure crushed me. But I still hit Chads and had a pretty good season, I think.
You did a double on Chads. I don't think people were doing that back then. Had anybody else done that?
No, I think that was the first.
It was every day's a Saturday first, and then Reasons when you threw 8 different doubles over big gaps in the backcountry at one point.
Yeah.
And then Reasons is also that huge fucking crash you had in that movie where you probably got more views than anything else. It's probably one of the best viewable crashes in ski history.
That's all people remember me for.
Angel's known for a tomahawk. Probably Ooh. Ian as well.
She's got a good one coming this year.
That'll get a ton of views, but you have gap to tree to flat spin off the tree somehow.
Oh yeah, that one was gnarly. I think that was the same year. I was just too hyped up. I was like, I have to do better than every day's a Saturday. And then I just started crashing and my mind was warped.
When you start doing that shit, is it a calculated decision the year before and you go to water ramps and figure it out that way?
No, all those tricks and every day's a Saturday, I literally just tried on pow jumps. I was so happy not to have to hit park jumps anymore. I was just I'm going to huck all these tricks that kids are doing in the park and try them in the backcountry, and I ended up landing a few. And those are the ones in the movie. Actually, I was trying a rodeo 10 off this hip feature in Montana. Didn't land it. It was so close, but I tried it 20 times. So I have all this footage of me crashing, trying this rodeo 10. But yeah, I tried a lot of crazy stuff that year. And then the next year I was just trying to one up it and just kept getting broke off.
But that's your life. I mean, every year, the next year, you need to one up or take that gnarlier line. And that's another thing that's part of your life is the risk. And speaking of high risk, when we were talking about Chads and you have that concussion, is that one you go to the hospital and it really fucks you up?
Oh yeah, it was pretty bad. I spent the night in the hospital. I didn't really hype up the crash because it wasn't as crazy as Tanner's. But I was definitely concussed. I took a sled down from Chads and I don't even remember that.
Did you hit the wall?
Oh, yeah, I think so. It was crazy. I hit my head on my knee or something weird.
And how many days does it take you to come back from that?
Well, I landed it first and then I crashed after because I kept trying it. The same thing that happened with Tanner, he landed the sick switch 9, he shouldn't have hit it again, or I wouldn't have hit it again if I were him, but I was the same way. I was oh, that trick wasn't good enough. I'm going to keep hitting it. And then I got a concussion.
Speaking of going to the hospital, I think you were in the hospital in France, but it was non-ski related. And what happened there?
Oh, yeah, no comment. Wait, I had someone bring up that story recently. It was actually someone who was there, this kid from Czech Republic. Over there, everyone comes for those big things. But I was I don't remember that. But yeah, I woke up in a hospital from drinking too much. Is that from Luke Van Valen, that story?
No, I don't even know who it's from. I just find all this stuff on the internet.
Yeah, this guy finds all the good stuff.
Speaking of the internet, I didn't want to spoil it too early, but I guess I am because I said I found it on the internet. You are one of the only people that I've ever had on the podcast who had their phone hacked and had their private information put on their personal Instagram, and that has to be fucking terrible. What happens there?
I thought everyone forgot about that.
No one forgets about that. They remember your crash and revolver, and they remember your dick on the internet, even though it was blocked.
That's why you don't leave your passwords lying around your ex-girlfriend's computer.
But that's a sex crime of the internet sort.
Totally, man. It was pretty hectic. I talked to the police and everything, but didn't press charges, but definitely not happy.
Are you friends with her anymore?
No, I haven't talked to her since, actually. Or seen her.
Because you could have made her register as a sex offender, I feel like.
Well, I put a restraining order against her.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we talked to the police and dealt with it, but I didn't press any charges, and all my sponsors were really cool about it. Even though at first some of them were a little upset. I was upset. I was just like, this is like one of those Netflix shows, you know? Yeah, it was a mess, man. And it happened in the middle of winter, which sucked. I'm just like trying to ski and not deal with things like that, man. Yeah. I don't wish it upon anyone. If you're thinking about hacking someone's Instagram, just think about how many people you're going to just ruin.
How many people saw your dick on the internet? It was blocked out.
No, everyone saw it. I didn't think that many people really looked at my Instagram.
Yeah, that's the thing is like when you're an athlete who does crazy things for like 15 years, people actually care about what you do.
That was a realization. I got like 100 phone calls that night.
Wow.
100 phone calls, 100 text messages. Just like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? You're getting hacked.
We'll move to 2013. You film with Field Productions. You film with TGR. And you get Best Male Performance with TGR. You get Best Natural Air with Field Productions. I'm the one who's hosting the Powder Awards. I remember being like, Best Natural Air. Tim Durtschi. Tim, where are you? And then there was no Tim. And then we wait for a couple more minutes and there's no Tim. And then someone's in my ear being like, we can't find Tim. And I get on the microphone. I'm like, I ate dinner with Tim earlier. And he was saying that chicken was really not settling right in his stomach. I don't know what happened, but I'm guessing Tim's in the bathroom. Then like 5 minutes later, you show up.
Did everyone wait for me?
Oh yeah, we waited for you.
I didn't know this until now. The last thing I remember is I don't even remember this, but my friend said he carried me onto the stage. And then I gave some great speech that you probably remember.
I don't remember it either, but yeah, you were fine once you got on the stage.
Yeah. I guess when I'm inebriated, I'm not that obtuse. More I'm just happy-go-lucky. I have good memories from Powder Awards, totally. I guess we could talk about this season.
We still got more on my little agenda first before we get into what you want to talk about. But we will talk about what you want to talk about. You can get your notebook.
I got my notes, man.
You did a Next Games reel ski. I'm guessing you didn't win because it was a contest and you would have told me if you won.
Yeah, I did not win that, but I was really proud of my segment I made. I wanted to make it for the style of the riding I had. I think I just wasn't happy with the tricks I got that year. I didn't really land the things that I wanted to. So I was like kind of bummed. I was like, I don't even want to make this edit. I think I just put too much pressure on myself again. And that kind of sucked to like put pressure on yourself making film in a contest. But I love that contest. It was cool to be a part of, but I think I just took it too seriously.
Now it is time for my final set of sponsors, and I'm going to start with Spy Optic. Spy has spent the past 25 years innovating the sunglass game, but more importantly, they've spent 25 years making you look good. To celebrate this 25th anniversary, Spy is re-releasing the MC3, an ode to Jeremy McGrath's original MC sunglass. The new Dirty Mo 2 is a sick update to Dale Jr.'s original Dirty Mo, and the Scoop 2 celebrates Spy's OG Scoop sunglasses, which started it all. If you wear sunglasses and listen to this podcast, it's time to support me, save some money, and make yourself look good. What I want you to do is head on over to spyoptic.com, pick out some sunglasses, head on over to checkout, and you are going to save 20% by entering the code POWEL20, that's all one word and the number 20, and you'll save 20% off. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing my favorite Northwest beer since 2006. But over the years, and even before they sponsored my podcast, they've been one of my favorite beer brands because they do so much for action sports. They're the first beer to produce their own ski and snowboard movie. They support a team of A-list athletes. They throw an incredible series of events with their Hella Big Air. And they have signature beers that donate to important causes like Protect Our Winners. If all of that isn't cool enough, the people that work at 10 Barrel, they're all people that like to drink beer outside. Next time you're at the store, please buy some 10 Barrel and support the brand that really makes a difference in the sports we love. To find out more about the beer, the pubs, and everything 10 Barrel, head on over to 10barrel.com. So you film with almost everyone. Not many people can say that.
Never filmed with Level 1. I was actually in the credits of Level 1 once. Or wait, no, it was a bonus feature. It's not cool.
Not many people can say they've almost filmed with every company. Some of the companies are looser, some of them are more organized. And if you're to describe working with Rage, what's that like?
I was young and I would hit anything. It was loose and I was just like trying to get as many shots as I could. And I was like filming urban and stuff. So I was like, if I get tons of shots, I could have opening SAG. That was my mentality back when I was younger. It's like, I just want to get as many shots as I can.
And then when you move up to Poor Boys, is it a different experience? Is it more organized with Poor Boys and better equipment and better trips?
It was less organized because I was with Pete, but it was a little more organized. Poor Boys was sick. They were just like, go film as much backcountry as you can. You don't have much budget, so go to Utah and hit all these gap jumps. And then I was like, when I first met Pep and Julian and JP, and those guys like took me under their wing pretty much.
23, 24, working with JP, Pep, Julian, some of the godfathers.
Yeah. I was looking through some of my old emails, and I'll never forget when I got invited to go on this Alaska trip. Like, we were going to Haines, and it was Julian, JP, Pep. We're all on this email chain, and Tyler Hamlet's like introducing me and like, oh yeah, we're bringing up this guy Tim. Yeah, so my biggest trip with Poor Boys was going to Haines, and it was with Julian, JP, and Pep. And I remember JP just being like, I don't really know this Tim guy, but you guys say he's cool, and we'll see you in Alaska. And I was looking at some of those old emails the other day, and it's kind of cool looking back and that stuff, and like going up to Alaska this year with Kai for his first trip, because it was pretty cool to like be there as a mentor for Kai, 13-year-old skiing in Alaska. It's pretty wild.
Who was the biggest mentor in your career when you think about it back then, with all those heavy hitters with Poor Boys?
Yeah, it was definitely like when I filmed a segment with Poor Boys in Utah, and they're like, oh, well, Pep's gonna come out on the shoot with you. And I was just like, what? That's crazy. So getting to like learn some backcountry skills from him, just how to build stuff. I had a pretty good idea, but it was something like I kind of learned myself, like building backcountry jumps and figuring out what works in the backcountry. But yeah, having guys like Pep out there was crazy to watch them operate.
Did you ever film with MSP?
No.
MSP and Level 1 are the folks that you did not film with. You film with Osnes. And when I think of ski movies, I feel like he's probably the best. The most creative, and like the Teddy Bear Crisis to me was one of my favorite ski movies. What's different about filming with a guy like that? I would think it's a different experience than some other people.
Well, I tried to get him to keep filming, and he wanted to like go film windsurfing or something. He's a very interesting dude. Like, we had so much fun on that year that we shot together. It was like a contracted to shoot for 2 months.
With Atomic?
Yeah. And so it was like a really cool format. Just film as much stuff as you want in Utah. And he was like super down because he had already done Teddy Bear Crisis there. So he knew a lot of the stuff. And we hit a couple of things that he had hit before. But we also found a bunch of new stuff. It was just like a huge year for me to have my own filmer. We were filming like Brandon Becker, and Ben Chetler came for a few days, and Jossie Wells. But basically he was just like, yeah, well, I'm contracted to do this for 2 months. So every day you want to go out, we'll go out. And I was so hungry. So I like wanted to go sledding every day. We called the movie 44 Days because out of 60 days, I think we shot 44 days. That's why the movie was called that.
It could have been 60 days. You just didn't feel like going out a few days?
Yeah. Well, those are the days that he had to go film Pipe or Park with Jossie or something.
So is he the weirdest guy that you ever worked with, though, Chris Osnes?
Yeah, he's out there. And I think that's why he makes such cool stuff. Creative.
So now we should get into what you want to talk about, because like no one else that I've ever had on a podcast, you came here with a list of things that you wanted to talk about. And I want to talk about all the ones that we didn't hit. And what haven't we talked about that you really do want to talk about?
I do have a little notebook. Wrote down a bunch of weird stuff. But we talked about a lot of it. I guess I just am most excited about this year.
So you're 33, so
I'm a lot older than a lot of these skiers.
Yeah, you sure are. But you know what? You've never had a major injury that's taken you out, have you?
I mean, I get injured a lot. My girlfriend will say I'm hurt constantly.
Are they more like you're hurt, not injured?
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, you never think, at least I felt invincible forever. I was like, I'm not going to feel sore. Like, that's ridiculous. And now I'm just like, wake up after skiing for a week straight, just can barely move.
Are you a yoga skier and like are healthy now?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I have to be or else I would not be able to ski. I've definitely taken up the healthy lifestyle as I've gotten older.
It's a smart thing to do.
It's hip. It's cool. It's what everyone on Instagram's talking about.
Yeah, do you paddleboard as well?
Yeah, I sup, bro.
Okay, just making sure. What else do you have that I haven't covered that you have in your notes? That's really what I want to know.
Oh, we're talking about my notes now.
Yeah, because you want to talk about this season. So what's going on this season? What are you so excited about? Your park going to be pretty insane this year? Are you excited for that to come out?
I actually am. The past couple of years with TGR, I mean, I've been like so dedicated to filming with them, but I feel like this year everything came together. I moved to Wyoming and live with my girlfriend there. And this year the movie is very location based. So we had a crew up in Whistler, we had a crew that went to Norway, we had a crew that stayed in Wyoming, and a crew that went to Alaska. So the whole Wyoming segment is based around me and my friends that skied there. Nikki Kiefer came up and did some riding with me. Todd Laguerre. So it's a really cool concept for the movie, I think. And for me, it was great just to kind of like stay in one spot because you kind of get to this point where, oh, I need to travel. I need to go to these exotic locations. But I just stayed in Wyoming and sledded and found cool zones. Got a lot of tricks that I haven't really done in a few years, which is cool. I know we were talking about how sometimes it's hard to get those tricks, but if you stay in one spot, it kind of helps. So yeah, Wyoming was my home and looking forward to the movie this year, Winterland.
And if you have to rank your top 3 movies, you can put Winterland number 1 right now.
I will.
But if you have to rank your second and third in TGR movies, what are you most proud of?
My first year, Dream Factory, I was pretty stoked on that because we went to Alaska, which was my home. And the Jones boys were like hyped. They were like, well, Durtschi knows Alaska really well, so we'll have some filmers up there with him and he can kind of do what he wants to do up there. So that movie turned out really well and I was really proud of that. And then I think Way of Life would probably be my next favorite out of the TGR group. I went to fantasy camp. That was like the first year of fantasy camp.
People don't know what fantasy camp, what is it?
Fantasy camp was basically the idea there was to have a camp in a Alaskan range where you could fly the heli out of. So you would basically be based in the mountains. And it is pretty glamping. It's not like camping in a tent. It was pretty bougie as far as that goes. But it was the first year of fantasy camp and I got invited up there for a week. Anytime you get invited to go to AK, it's a pretty special experience. So that movie turned out really well. I think that was one where I won a powder award where you handed me a powder award that I don't remember.
Yeah, that was that year. Well, at this point in the show, I have something called Inappropriate Questions. And normally I would call someone up. I'd get them to record some stuff. I'd play it to you right now. And you would have to answer those inappropriate questions. But I'm at Andy Parry's house of the Line Traveling Circus, of the Tell a Friend tour. I don't even know what else Andy does. He's like a handyman of all kinds. But I'm going to bring Andy in. He's going to ask you 3 questions.
Let's hear it.
And we'll get him. Andy!
He's out there. He's right there. I can see him in his backyard. He's shoveling, gardening or something.
All right, RJD too.
I feel like you've been remodeling for years.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
So we did an interview with Andy Parry a couple years ago. I was in his house. It was a total shithole. And 2 years later, and probably thousands of hours later, Andy's house is like a grown-up person's house, although it's not super clean.
Very modern.
It is hard wood. It is very modern. Tim's impressed. I'm impressed. You looking to buy a house? Because Andy's selling a house here. You've been coming here for like 10 years.
You're fixing this up and then selling it?
Yeah.
You're flipping it?
Trying to.
Nice.
Live and flip for life, you know what I'm saying?
All right, so what is your first inappropriate question?
By Andy Parry.
Yeah, well, I feel like these things are meant to be like not mean, but like, yeah, how many one night stands have you had?
Off the top of my head, 20.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot of one night stands.
Andy looks appalled.
What's the percentage of protection used in those 21 night stands? Just out of curiosity, because you're never going to see these girls again. You don't know what happened until you spit into one of those things and send it to like 23andme.com. How many were protected?
90 percentile.
Okay. All right. Let's go with question number 2.
How many times do you usually jerk off during a ski trip? Like if you're gone for like 2
Well,
weeks.
it depends on like the close quarters of the...
Well, let's just say very close.
Okay, so we're talking like bunk beds. Here in
yeah, for
Austria
sure.
and like
Yes.
there's cows in the living room.
Yeah. Only private time is pretty much bathroom is pretty much what it comes down to.
Depending on how long I ski, I'd say like twice a day.
No. There's no way, dude. Twice a day?
Well, on like down days. Just go in the bathroom and turn on the shower. Or in the shower.
That's a super weird question. It's a super weird answer.
I'm usually on trips with like my close friends. And they probably do the same thing.
That's a loaded question. Let's go with question number 3.
Question number 3.
Can't believe you answered that.
I'll answer any question Andy
shit.
Parry has to ask.
Oh, well, I don't want to...
We can do more than 3.
Since these were 2 pretty harsh, inappropriate questions, the third one, I'm just going to throw out there as just a question in general. Since we're kind of the same age, I think you're a little bit older, maybe? 32?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 32. Who was your biggest inspiration, one single skier, if you're going to name one, as you were growing up, in your early, mid to late teens? Your most inspirational, like, this is the fucking guy, man.
Well, I think it was Pep. I think we talked a bit about Pep, but
It's the dumbest inappropriate question ever.
I had 2 hard-hitting ones.
bring a more inappropriate one.
More inappropriate question. Have you ever shit yourself after a fall?
Yeah, actually at Windell's. It was one of Sammy's jumps. It was a huge thing. I actually got like carted off, but I shit my Saga pants and I think I washed them and used them again.
Did you sell them after?
No, I kept them because they were one of my faves.
Andy, when you think of Tim Durtschi as a skier, we're going to outro him here. What comes to mind?
I think of just the dub and backcountry. There was kind of some of that going on, but you started that trend. Doing like the Cork 10 blunt or like Cork 9 blunt was just like a big turning point in skiing. One person, Mikkel, did it real sick. Like, what was it, Cork 9 blunt, or is he doing Cork 10? Or is it...
Yeah, 10.
Or switch Cork 10. Sorry, this whole switch Cork 10 thing, it was like you doing those dubs was kind of like the start of the whole dub thing, the backcountry. And now it's gotten to such a crazy level, so that's a note right there in the skiing history is you kind of set the tone for all of it. So you're kind of to blame for all the aerial skiing that's going on and how they're fucking up skiing.
I guess it all goes back to that. Every day is a Saturday, right?
Yeah, I would throw that as a very ski history noteworthy moment that you have to acknowledge sometimes. That segment was it. Well, I'm going to go back to just cleaning up a bunch of shit, so y'all...
Yeah, when you sell this house, let me know. I'm in the market.
Yeah, it's a great location, dude.
I'm no agent, but I'll take a few %. I am Jewish.
All right. Well, anyways.
Thank you for your time, Andy. Thank you for your time, Tim.
Thanks.
And that's pretty much the podcast for this week, and that's it. So that was time with Tim Durtschi, and I love interviewing guys like Tim. You can tell that he either hasn't had media training or he wasn't paying attention during the sessions. He answers most of everything that was asked, and he was a great sport. It was refreshing. What's also cool is that he's done so much up until this point, and that he thinks his best segment is coming out this year. But one day, when ski historians look back at milestones in skiing, Tim's epic late 2009 session on Chad's Gap will come to define not only Tim's career, but also a new chapter in the sport. That's the show for this week. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on. And if you have any questions or concerns for me, feel free to email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com. I will get back to you. I also need to thank my great sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Evo, Stanley, Spy Optic, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.